I think we'll go ahead, it's right at 4 o'clock, and we got started with today's meeting. This is the Tuesday, November 10th meeting of the Infrastructure Committee. Ann Poe may be late or may not be here, so she sent me an email. She's at a doctor's appointment, wasn't sure if it was going to get done in time, so she may be popping in. But we said there's two of us here. We will be moving forward with the meeting. And so we have a series of, Ralph Russell is here, a member of the committee. The mayor is ex officio, but I don't think Ron was going to be here today. And there's agendas over here. If you haven't seen the agenda, feel free to grab one in the corner. And we're bringing in some more chairs. Between streets, topsoil, sewers, we're the most popular committee. We're getting everybody lined in here.
I need more than one because other people
Thank you.
You need more?
Oh, we're moving up. Great, thank you. Yeah, it's good being in the first week. Why don't you slide, if you could slide that next table forward, Jim? Tom, could you slide the table forward a little bit and give a little more room for chairs in the back? Thank you. Hey, there's more in here now. Do we have enough chairs for everybody?
Yes.
Let's see here. Yeah. About 3 or 4 more. We're going to bring a few more chairs in here. We'll still get started. We have should be room for everybody to sit down here in just a second. We'll bring some more in from the adjacent conference room. We have no presentation scheduled for today except for our topsoil one that's coming up here at the start of the meeting. And so the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from 10/13/2015. Do I have a motion? A motion from Ralph. I'll second that. Any other discussion on minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. The first item on the agenda, we normally have a public comment period at the end of the meeting, but we have an item that's got, I think, some public here that's going to have the presentation on topsoil. And so we'll move up the comments, the public comments in this section, so you don't have to wait through the rest of our meeting, even though it's very interesting. We got ash blowers on the agenda, we got paving for progress, we got maintenance, we got Sandy talking about sewers and things, but you're welcome to stay for the first part, so we'll adjust the agenda a little bit, and then we'll have a point of public comment after we have the presentation. And what we ask is that we'll allow a little more than 10 minutes total, but we ask everybody to make their comments concise to about 2 minutes apiece. And then if people have spoke and you're going to say the same thing, we appreciate you it being said once, or if you want to say something different, hopefully we can add to the dialogue during this one part. So we still got more coming in here. Look at this, they're just pouring in. We are going to move down to the Paramount next month, and we'll put it up on the marquee. And so with that, John, I didn't see John. Where's John at? Oh, there you are, John, standing in the back. You didn't realize you were so popular, did you? John, you might explain your position at the city and then go into the presentation, please.
Will do.
Yeah, spot up here so everybody can hear, and we'll turn the lights down when we get ready to.
So I'm John Durst. I'm your sewer superintendent. That means I work on the operations and maintenance side of things, all the storm and sanitary assets in the city. We clean, inspect, enforce, fine, all that good stuff. Together with Dave Wallace's engineering team, we manage the complete asset. So another important function of the sewer division is we're the point for all flood control within the city during any flood events, or wet streets is the point for snow events. And so when I think about the soil quality policy and what it means to me, for me, I think about a couple messages that I got in 2014 as my phone was blowing up during that event. And both of them from operators in the field. One was by 12th Avenue Southwest and called in and left a message. Oh God, we just lost all pumps. We can't keep up. I've never seen so much water. And the second one is from the guy who spends his off time volunteering with the police department. And he said, John, I'm out in Oakland. 2 kids got washed down a storm sewer. They're gonna put me in. I've never seen so much water. So that's what this policy means to me. It's a response to those messages, along with other policies that we're hopefully going to move forward here in the future with council's leadership. So with that, I'll move into my presentation. This is our proposed soil quality policy. And the first thing I'd like to go over is the city's vision. Cedar Rapids is a vibrant urban hometown beacon for people and businesses invest in building a greater community now and for the next generation. And I would say the key word here is invested, because this is a policy that's going to require some investment on those residential lots, on our publicly funded improvement projects. And with all investments, it's going to take time to see the dividends. But in time, we are going to see those dividends. And the people and the businesses of this community are committed to this investment. Another item that helps guide us when we look at these policies is our Vision CR initiative, which is part of our comprehensive plan. So this soil quality policy follows along with Green CR, in that it's promoting our stormwater management policies and also our water quality in the city. It also falls in line with our Strengthen CR, in that it's maintaining the character of our communities within the city. And it also within Protect CR, in that there's a direct benefit to this soil quality policy and our flood control system. So the background on why we're doing this today is that in 2012, there was a statewide 4-inch rule adopted. That rule was then modified, and it was known as the 4-inch topsoil rule in 2015, which added the language technologically possible and economically practical. So with that language and our inability to designate for all land disturbing activities what is necessarily technologically possible or economically practical for that entity, we went and undertook the effort to draft this policy. So we went to other communities, we reached out to our stakeholder groups, and we have the policy that ties to the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual, which is a similar tactic that we're using with the statewide urban design standards, or SUDAS, in that by tying this to a state manual, we're going to reduce the effort that we need to do in researching new methods and updating our manual year to year, because it's with a manual that's looked at the state level, it can harmonize across the communities, and it lessens our effort and makes our ordinance better. And it's better characterized as a top layer policy, because as you'll see, we're not necessarily requiring black dirt be brought into every site. We're requiring a top layer to maintain. So the purpose is to retain and restore soil quality. The results of this policy: reduce runoff, which less flooding and erosion, enhance the water quality, and create vital urban landscapes. So some of the feedback we've received on this policy is, why not enforce the state rule? Well, and that would require us to figure out what's technologically possible and economically practical for every land disturbing activity, including ourselves. Has the city ever enforced the state rule? We've inspected the state rule. We haven't had a reason to enforce it, even in the 2012 version. Can stormwater management features be discounted? So this would be basins, other stormwater management features. And the answer to that is those features could see discounts indirectly through the design process using the NRCS curve number method and the better soil qualities there. But does this policy directly discount? No, it will not. Why not just go back to the old state rule, which goes back to the first question, how would we enforce technologically possible, economically practicable on every land disturbing activity? Why is this policy better than the old rule? The old rule had 4 inches required. There wasn't a lot of science behind that. By tying this to the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual, not only do we get the benefit of having that manual provided for us, similar to SUDAS, but it's also based on science built by stakeholder groups at the state level. Why does the city have to do this now? 2014. The events that we've been seeing, the tragedies that we've borne witness to, this is a priority for this community. And how much will this rule cost me? We've run some preliminary figures, and I know our friends with the developer group, they're going to run their own figures, but we ballparked this to be about $1,000 to $1,500 for a single residential lot. So the mechanics of this, how does it work? There's a couple phases. The first phase is the requirement to retain and redistribute the soils that are disturbed into the topsoil as defined by the ordinance. The second phase is to select a soil quality plan, which is one of the 8 methods outlined in the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual. And that is just simply checking a box on the minor or major erosion control permit. We're not asking for a detailed typed out plan. We're saying you're going to use method 1 or you're going to use method 7 out of the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual. So it keeps the burden of paperwork low on our builder and development community, as well as ourselves. This is kind of a fun infographic on the 8 methods. It's, you know, you have to read the methods to get more information, but they're relatively cheap. They're simply applied, and the plans are cookbook easy because we're not asking you to rewrite the book. We're asking you just to select the method out of the book. This is a graphical representation of those methods. The first 2 are essentially there's no disturbance occurring. The next 2, there's some amount of topsoil that already exists on the site, and they just have to make sure it's uncompacted. The next few deal with amendments to the soil that exists on the site and the tillage of that soil in order to mix it up. And the last one is to promote the growth. So you can see some deep time aeration there. So how do we make this ordinance or this topsoil or top layer policy come into effect? Well, we need to amend our Chapter 71 of our municipal code with additional definitions and permit requirements. Chapter 72, which is our stormwater management ordinance, we have to add specific language for this topsoil policy. And we're also looking at a permit fee schedule, which is already authorized in our ordinance. We just need a resolution passed through council. The current permit fee schedule that we're proposing is $200 for a major erosion control, $100 for a minor erosion control. These are the items covered by each, and there's penalty for not acquiring the permit prior to work at 2 times the permit fee and resubmittal and renewal fee of 50% of the initial permit fee. So again, the benefits, topsoil aligns with the city's vision and Vision CR goals. It provides flexibility to our developers and builders. Provides economical options. You're not going to have to import topsoil that doesn't exist, but you will have to add amendments, which are compost and sand. Compost is $20 a ton at the landfill. They have plenty of it, just ask Dick Ransom. And sand is typically about $7 a ton, depending on the type of sand you're getting. Reduce flooding and erosion, increases the water quality of our stormwater runoff. It's an effective policy for our stormwater master plan and the other policies that we're looking at. It harmonizes corridor development standards, especially with Corville, and it ties to the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual, which gives us additional benefits. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wayne Paulson to discuss. Wayne Peterson, sorry. Where is Wayne Paulson? Wayne Peterson to discuss the importance of topsoil. I don't know if you've heard. I guess I can take some quick questions on policy mechanics.
I wanted to maybe add something, because I think this ties back, we talked about this a little bit at the Developers Council. Maybe, Garrett, could you give an update on the stormwater master plan and how this integrates into that?
Yeah, well, at our last,
Why don't you stand up so you don't hear you back there?
city staff and our engineering consultants, HR Engineering and Mr. Military had a workshop on October 14th. And at the workshop, there was a discussion on policy items and how they would be incorporated in the stormwater master plan. And certainly one of these items is the topsoil rule that John discussed in pretty detail here. Did you actually-
Schedule, yeah, what's the, I think right, you're gonna give a report later in the session. The schedule for the report to be completed is when?
Yeah, the schedule for the report to be completed is June of 2016.
16, okay. Because they do tie together, so I didn't even catch you off guard there. You were later in the agenda. So we're gonna have what, a quick presentation. Wayne, do you have a presentation here?
As quick as I can, and I got too much information for my time limit, so we'll make it from the fire hose.
Why don't you give a little background on who you are? Wayne?
Okay, I'm Wayne Peterson with the Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, and I coordinate the urban conservation program there. Historically, most of our programs and services have been directed at the agricultural landscape. Secretary already started the urban program back in 2008. Prior to that, we worked with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, USDA agency. So I'm kind of proud, kind of ashamed to say that in the spring, it will be my 40th year in the field of soil and water conservation. I mean, it did not I'd like to talk about the water cycle and just briefly mention that, today surface runoff is a pretty big aspect of our hydrologic cycle, certainly with our urban landscapes, with our impervious parking lots and roads and roofs and compacted turf areas. Historically, if I think our landscape absorbed and infiltrated most rainfall, so what we're trying to do with the new stormwater management paradigm is infiltrate the frequent small rains that dominate annual precipitation and minimize the runoff. And of course, it's the runoff that delivers the fluids to the storm sewers, which then convey it directly to the receiving streams of the creek. So historically, probably not more than 10% of annual precipitation moved as surface runoff. I'm talking about pre-European settlement times when our native ecosystems of Topsoil Break was intact. And then today, our modern landscape, we shed the majority of rain as runoff and infiltrate far less. A lot of it's due to the added imperviousness as we grow our communities. You can see the pond on the left and the pond on the right, and the added imperviousness in that landscape. I like to show this local model. This is the city of Marion in 1952, and note the little bend in Indian Creek there. We jump ahead to modern times. There's the bend in the creek, there's our city core from 52, and there's the imperviousness we've added. So it's really not a surprise that Rich Patterson sat down there in Indian Creek for 30 years and watched floodings get higher and higher. Because we're shedding more runoff when we add imperviousness and compaction to our landscape. So we were a tallgrass prairie, and tallgrass prairie had deep roots, create the best soils in the world. An intact soil should have an A horizon, a B horizon, and a C horizon. Topsoil, subsoil, parent material. Soils 101. And you see a nice profile. A lot of times we run into profiles like this on landscapes that have been disturbed and graded for development. So your soil should have about 45% mineral matter. We'd like to see 5% organic matter content. We maybe had 10% when we first plowed up the prairie. We'd like to see 50% of that profile be pore space. And then the ideal growing condition is 25% of that pore space is occupied by air, 25 by water. And this is not important really, but we talk about sand-sized particles, silt-sized particles, and clay-sized particles. And the blend of the three particle sizes of mineral matter gives you a loam if they're uniformly blended. And that's the way I deal with is a loam. And if I had $1 for every time somebody said, oh, my yard's all clay, I'd be rich. But your yard is not all clay, even though it's compacted subsoil. And there's your pore space. I'm going to go fast on this. We often alter this. A lot of times we have less than 2% organic matter content. Organic matter content is key to making absorption. Texture is important. This is where we talk about our percent, sand, percent, 7% clay, and the loams that dominate. We rarely see a true clay soil. We don't very often see true sand. But there it is, the compacted subsoil. That's the key. And you're probably looking at 30-some% clay content in most Iowa soils, but it's the compaction that's really the issue. So decompaction and scarification is important. So if we stockpile topsoil like this, it's a beautiful job. Try to decompact before you respread that, and it'll be a better situation. Otherwise, you're going to be seeing sod on a compacted subsoil. Now, after a very small amount of rain has been absorbed, we're shedding runoff like that's a concrete parking lot. And there you have it. You see the water coming out from under the sod because it's laid on compacted subsoil. This is 2 hours after 2 inches of rain. Sun's out, streets dry. This morning it had been raining, and it quit raining. You see the concrete's wet, but it's not shedding runoff, but the green space is. That's hydrologic dysfunction network. That's what we're trying to do with this new rule, topsoil rule. So there you have the asphalt, the sod on an asphalt parking lot. This is a lawn care center, or watering it to keep it green until they can sell it. But it's kind of human. So here we are at a habitat project. We're spreading compost, incorporating, jump-starting the process of building organic matter content and structure and biological activity and soil profile. On the existing homes, you can retrofit. Even if you've got bad turf like that, people aren't going to go tear it up very often. But they will aerate it, pull those little cores. This is a hand of a colleague who built a house and moved in this summer, aerated this fall just a few days ago. That's definitely compacted subsoil. That's probably looking at the depth of the soil attached to the roots of the sod. So that's a pretty hydrologically dysfunctional yard. So there's that deep tined aeration, piston-driven aeration. You can go down maybe 6 inches, gives you macro pore space for water to move down. And then some vendors have geared up a small-scale equipment that can get through gates and into backyards and spread about a ½ inch of compost. You want to see that grass sticking up through it. It's just a little auger feed. And then there's some pull behind it, but you're probably not getting through too many gates with that rig. And if you have a blower truck, a pneumatic blower truck, you can take that hose and get through just about anywhere, made on a nice uniform layer. Once again, you see that grass popping through. This gives a yard instant absorption power. Well, there is a formula for calculating the amount of compost. We won't go through that. But there's a yard that got treated in the fall, and the neighbors didn't, and that's the following spring. Another yard that had the compost treatment, and yet another one. This was taken last fall, and that's about 2 weeks after this yard got treated. So it was really an instant visual as well as overall jump in health with the lawn.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Winnie. All right, let's see. John?
Oh, by the way, there will be training on soil quality restoration here in Cedar Rapids on the 16th of December. Stacy will be reporting.
Okay. John, one of the questions that came up was training and enforcement. How do you check out whether it's 1, 8, 7, whatever it is, and how, when you go and inspect the site? Have you started that process?
So on the training side of thing, we're committed to working with developer, builder, and even our own public CIP group and educating on this policy and making sure everyone knows what it entails and how we'll be inspecting. Our inspections we plan to do prior to sod. It'll be a visual inspection with a soil probe. We can tell just by looking at a yard whether it's been tilled and uncompacted. And a soil probe will allow us to check the depth of at least 8 inches of a uncompacted top layer.
So that's how.
That's it. And if the sod's down before we get there, it's pretty easy just to take a look, probe it.
Okay. All right, so the process we're going through is that this has been ongoing dialogue here for about 60, 90 days as a part of our stormwater study. And so a presentation was made, a month ago, I think, relating to this committee. And we asked you to continue the dialogue, meeting with groups. And so this is coming back, and that's why you have a turnout here, because people want to comment on the fact that we are working to move forward with a policy of some sort. And so what we wanted to do was to move up the comment period here and get input, because we're still a stretch out before it goes to the city council, and then there's public hearings there, and then there's votes, related to this. And so, Jen, I don't know whether you want to comment on timing and what we're trying to do timing-wise. I think you talked a little bit about that at the Developers Council.
I did, yeah. We talked
This is Jen Winters, the Public Works Director.
As we've drafted this policy and gone out and done some outreach and got feedback on it, one of the misconceptions was that we were kind of inventing the wheel and in a silo drafting this policy. And really, I think what John alluded to, what John mentioned is a good point, is that we felt like it's the best is to use a manual that's already out there, which is why we use the stormwater management manual. There's research that has gone into that, there's testing that has gone into that, as opposed to a standard 4-inch rule that really there's no basis in that 4-inch rule. Another thing that I would like to point out about this policy is what you just mentioned of the testing of it. If we do a standard 4-inch rule, We now have to go out and do soil testing on all of that, or the contractor, the developer, the builder, whoever it may be, is going to have to do enough testing to document that there is in fact 4 inches out there, and that it is topsoil, which involves, testing the components of that soil, which gets to be more complicated than doing a soil probe and picking with these methods. The timeline, pending today, the first step would be for infrastructure to approve to council, and then we would go to council, and the time constraint that we're really on is we want to have enough time to take this out and do education on it ahead of the 2016 construction season. So we want to make sure that everybody has enough time to answer questions, ask questions, get them answered, and educate our contractors, builders, development community on how we would implement this.
Okay. So with that, and again, we're here to hear dialogue and comments, and before we move on, so again, I'd like to keep everything, we've got a lot of people here, I may want to comment, to keep everything to a couple minutes, and so, yes, go ahead.
Well, if there's a big area and when the heavy duty equipment comes in and is contouring everything, instead of destroying everything and just having contours of clay, is there any way that they can integrate from the city's giant piles of compost? Can they integrate that when they're developing the site right from the get-go and kind of combine it all together with the heavy-duty equipment? And secondly, is there any way, we got so many lawn care companies in this town, is there any way that the lawn care companies can be integrated into this whole scenario and help the builders do what this ordinance wants them to do? Because they may have access to better dirt, and they may be better at doing it, and they may have the equipment.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we're talking about further, that I don't know whether you want to comment on. Again, there's several of you here that are mass developers. Drew, I don't know whether you want to say whether that's feasible when you're doing a large development, or Dustin.
Actually, I'm going to learn about this too. I did have the same question. And then you had to tell us what that compaction process is during the construction process, but that still needs to be rolled.
Yeah, during active construction, if you're running equipment, you're always going to have compaction issue, but certainly as part of final grading, that can be incorporated. And I'm a big fan of compost. It's phenomenal stuff. In fact, I didn't get a series of slides that incorporated into this little presentation, but I've applied a 2-inch layer of compost in my shady backyard that has trouble maintaining good vegetation. I've got some trees cut down, so I've got some sunlight in there. So I put a 2-inch layer of compost on and seeded it. Within 2 weeks, I probably could have been around.
So that question, it's part of the first phase, and we're not going to dictate what happens during the first phase, other than we want to know what topsoil, if any, was there to begin with, and ensure that that topsoil remains and is redistributed after the initial developments are complete. So if it's economically all right for you guys to mix compost in with all that clay at the beginning, you could do that, but I doubt that will be the case. But again, we're at the beginning for that phase 1. Topsoil is defined in the ordinance, and we would expect that testing be done, and any topsoil that exists on the site remains on the site and is redistributed.
But there are sites that are nothing but clay. I've seen it. So what good is that going to do the home buyer if it's all clay?
No.
And then they just lay sod on there. What good is that going to do?
That would go back to the second phase, when the homes are being built. We would expect on a lot of topsoil to add amendments, and that's when the compost would be added. Now, if the developer is also the builder, it may be a good idea for them to just bring a bunch in, mix it together, and then bring it to the individual lots, and be in keeping with method 6 or 7 of their soil quality plan.
That is a method, one of them.
Any other, we got other people coming back, yes.
Jim, maybe you can answer this. If the state of Iowa has a manual, then why didn't the commission last spring use the manual when they revised the policy that you were referencing earlier? And then the other thing is, in this whole process, have we, with focus groups and interest groups, have we given that enough time to use those resources and other things to try to figure out what direction we ought to go in here in Cedar Rapids?
Okay, Jen, you want to answer that question, the state rules or whoever?
Why the Environmental Protection Commission did not use the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual? I don't think that was part of their scope. I cannot comment on why they did not decide to use that. But they did take a recommendation from a stakeholder group, and then they incorporated that without changes into their recommendation to the governor's office.
Other comments? Yes, it's back.
Yeah, I assume the model, you use a figure of 1,000 to 1,500 a lot. I assume the city has a model they can share with us.
Yeah, I think
Is
that.
that as to how you calculate that?
Right. No, Mr. Kern, you're still working on your numbers as well, right?
Yeah.
Dustin Kern, I'm a residential developer, not a builder. I sell lots, I don't build homes. We've been meeting, I appreciate staff's time they put in so far. I got two issues, one, economic impact, of course, bottom line, and two, timing. From an economic standpoint, I just find it hard, there has not been a detailed economic analysis of this proposed policy. There has not. A tenth of an acre being developed in the city, I'm not seeing a lot of them. And the scenario we talked about last week was 1,000 to 1,500, then there was $3,000. So I developed third plus acre lots. I know my colleagues developed similar. So we're gonna do our own analysis and compare notes because there just has not, with all due respect, been any sort of, there's been a minimal economic analysis. So we'll do that. We're gonna be talking to landscapers, we're gonna be talking to the excavators, I can talk to the mass graders as well. That's an interesting concept to think about how things could be incorporated into a mass development, but we're gonna do that. The other side of that coin, there's hard costs, but the costs that we're not talking about and haven't even really hit on are the soft costs and the implementation costs. And my concern is, in all actuality, this policy could make my life a lot easier. I strip topsoil, I stockpile it, I put in infrastructure, I mass grade, and I respread it, and I'm off the hook. But I'm an unselfish developer, and I'm really concerned about my customer, who's a small custom home builder. So the implementation side of that is very important and critical, and it's not gonna be without cost. So we're gonna go through that analysis as well. You know, some of the implementation, it's more than checking a box, with all due respect. There is a process that needs to be followed. So our goal is to try to get as much of this taken care of as possible, as soon as possible. But again, this is volunteer time, we don't get paid for our services, we're gonna do everything I can for the industry, which ultimately affects the home buyer at the end of the day.
Dustin, who's on your committee? I know your committee's been working.
Yeah, well, I'm representing the Home Builders Association and the Developers Council in general, and then there was a subcommittee that was formed and now is kind of been disformed due to what we think speeding up the process. But myself, Dick Ransom's on the committee, Todd Apple's on the committee, Chad Kelly's on the committee, Kyle Scogan's on the committee, and Frank Bellon's on the committee. I consider the three guys in front of me also generally on the committee: Jim Safford, Drew Retz, Randy Dostal, John Dusek. So we have a wide range of folks, I guess, with varying experiences. Again, my situation as just a land developer is gonna be different than Storm. It's gonna be different than Drew, it's gonna be different than Jim. Jim's kind of in between, he develops and builds, so there's different scenarios.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
so, lastly for me, I just wanna know what it's gonna cost the ultimate home buyer, because what I heard $3,000 the other day, I times it times 3 for 15,000 square foot lot, and that's excluding soft costs. So I'm anticipating, higher than 10 grand, but we'll go through the analysis, and we just wanna make sure that you're informed. So last comment, from a timing standpoint, I know Scott, I appreciate you being there last week. We've had this on our plate for 6 weeks. That may seem like a long time, it may seem like a short time. For me, this time of the year, it is an extremely short time. We'll do everything we can, but we would like the process to slow down because the policy being implemented without a good analysis, in my mind, is just not responsible for any of us, so.
Dustin, do you have a guess as to when you might be done with that analysis?
Well, last I heard, there's gonna be a
Yes,
council
yes.
meeting December 1st, and I'm gonna try to do with my colleagues everything I possibly can to do it by December 1st, but it's gonna be,
Well,
it's impossible.
I think why Rob was asking is that we're looking at timing issues here as well as the analysis. And so what we want to do is to make sure that that analysis is completed and that we have a chance to report that either to the city council or back to this committee.
I think a realistic timeframe, considering it's November 10th today, we have Thanksgiving around the corner, we have Christmas around the corner. I actually try to take one vacation a year, and it's in December. So I think, honestly, after the first of the year is when I feel comfortable about having an analysis that we can be comfortable with. I I mean, December 1st, I'd like to say it's feasible, I just think the product we're gonna get is gonna be not productive at all.
And let's define what you call the analysis.
The analysis, at least from my perspective, I'm gonna take, and I've talked to Kyle Spoden and Frank Bellin, they're gonna look at kind of the builder-developer scenario. The scenario that I'm gonna take is I'm gonna take a 15,000 square foot lot, because that's what I developed, and I'm gonna run through every scenario that I may leave an individual home builder. And that's I respread 2 inches, if there's only 2 inches on site, or if I respread 4 inches, or if I respread 6 inches, and I'm gonna look at each of those scenarios, and then look at all the 8 different implementation practices, and I'm gonna look at each one and prepare a cost analysis for each of those 8 or 6 steps. So that's the hard cost side of it. The other thing I'm gonna do is prepare kind of we are gonna prepare kind of a timeline, or I guess checklist of the soft costs. What does that individual builder need to do in addition to simply checking a box? Who do they need to contact to do some of these things? Again, I may be overthinking some of it, but I have to at this point. So there's, let's put it this way, the small custom home builders that I've talked to said, I'm just gonna take insurance and I'll pass it along to the home buyer if I can. I don't want that to happen. That's a disservice to our industry. So I'm gonna try to be as thorough as I can on soft costs, I'm gonna try to be as thorough as I can on hard costs, so I can present as many scenarios as I can for a small custom home builder.
Yeah, hit me with that again. Disservice to the industry, what do you mean by that?
Well, because the disservice to the industry is without the home builder knowing what they're gonna be dealt with, we're not doing them a service.
Okay, all right.
That's
Can I ask a thing?
That's one thing, quickly, Joe Garfield at the NR.
Yeah.
Is supposed to be doing an analysis for legislature. Then I refer him to you so you guys can communicate.
Sure, yep, I know Joe well, so I can.
Perfect.
I'll do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Scott.
We got one more question here from.
Just a follow-up for Dustin.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for doing this, all of you, because it's important to know, really, to me anyway, what it's gonna cost you guys, coming out of all this. I can't make a decision without knowing what you're spending now. So include in that analysis, here is the extra cost, associated, not the total cost, because, whatever you're doing now costs something. What is the extra cost this ordinance is going to put on a 15,000 square foot lot, or per square foot on various lot sizes or whatever? And thanks again for the willingness to do that.
John, your
Question, follow from John. So what, the city's analysis, what assumptions do they have on lot size? Was it 10,000 feet or 5,000?
It was about 5,000 square feet. We assumed that there was no home that was going to be built on it, that the soil was stripped off completely. And how would you affect the method number 7, which was placing the compost down and then tilling to a depth of 8 inches. With that, the material and labor costs on 5,000 square feet, we calculated to be about $1,000. The $3,000, we looked at the same, 5,000 square feet and said, how much would it cost to truck in 4 inches of topsoil? And that came out to be about $3,000. So we just kind of did an apples-to-apples comparison on a lot, saying that somebody and not in the right mind stripped it completely and then came back and added the amendments to build it in.
If you looked at the average lot that's been platted in the last 5 years in Cedar Rapids, what do you think the size is? 5,000 feet?
Well, it's probably closer to Mr. Kern's number, which is about 15,000 square feet.
So why did you use 5,000?
Again, it's just a metric to do an apples-to-apples comparison. So I have that. I'm not talking about how big the house is going to be or how small the house is going to be, how much driveway is going to be there, and how much garage is going to be there. It's just 5,000 square foot lot that you're taking everything off of, and then what's the condition that you have to have, and then bring it back to this policy. So it's not trying to give you the 15,000 square foot lot with no home on it. It's just looking at what would the impervious area be, or permeable area be on that lot, and if you strip that off and run it back.
How about the soft cost that Dustin talked about? Was that part
Well,
of the
part of the soft costs that Dustin's talking about are things that we're hoping to allay with this policy based on the fact that you can check a box, and that we are willing to reach out to the community and do as much training as possible to make people feel comfortable with this policy. So, we as the city are trying as best as we can to make sure everyone's aware of this policy, to have it in place with enough time so everybody can feel committed to this policy and move forward during the next construction season.
Okay, we have at the back, yeah?
Yes, I have two questions. One is that in the policy that you're developing, is that going to be taking into account the topography of the land and the neighborhood around it, where there's maybe some hills that's kind of a natural runoff, and that certainly can be treated differently than flat land, and does that enter into it, or is it we're all the same?
So as far as taking into account topography, site developments have grading plans and everything. This policy is solely focused on that top layer of soil. So we're not determining what BMP or best management or infiltration practice is going to be utilized based on topography. We're simply asking that land that's disturbed due to construction activity be returned to a state with a quality top layer.
So the water running off then, if there's just a natural runoff, you're not going to do anything to...
If there's a natural runoff or
have
topography
more
that needs
topsoil?
to be taken into account, we expect that to be taken into account during the design of the development, not because of this topsoil policy.
That's a good question. You had a second question, you said?
And I have a second question. After it's done, the builder has built, and is there any kind of a recourse for disagreement when it's over? In other words, the new homeowner is not satisfied with what was done. Is there any kind of recourse? Do we have any vehicle for them?
So you're talking about appealing that you feel like the quality of the top layer isn't sufficient? Because again, we're talking about topsoil.
Or the recommendation of the developer is this, and this is how much it's going to cost, and you say, and the developer is saying that should take care of it, and that will take care of it, and it doesn't. Is there any recourse for the homeowner?
So again, I guess I'm not
Any
understanding.
vehicle for it?
So there's something wrong with your lot and you want to have recourse against the developer?
That, that taking the most of us are pretty ignorant of topsoil and grass and things like that. And so we're taking a developer who is going to suggest that
So
2 inches of soil, topsoil can do it, but it really doesn't do it. Is there any recourse, is there any vehicle for a recourse?
So we will have our inspection records because there will be a minor erosion control permit, which will have a inspection that will have been complete. You can get those records from the city. And if you do feel that there's something wrong with the topsoil layer or if it's hydraulically dysfunctional, there are other tests that can be performed. But that would be for you to provide that evidence up front, and then you could take that forward to a developer or a builder to discuss with them on possible remediation.
And also, I think this policy will lay out specific options of what needs to be on those lots in the end. So, in your instance where you're saying somebody's telling you 2 inches is enough, that's not the case. Like, there will be specific methods that need to be chosen, and based on the permit that John was discussing, the developer or builder will be telling us which option they're choosing, so we know what we're testing.
Just to add to your first question, the methodology is designed to absorb a 1.25-inch rain. That's been identified as what's called the water quality volume for the state of Iowa. And it's a measure behind the water quality volume, that's the size of the rain quality event that is as big or bigger than 90% of rainfall events. So when we analyze historical rainfall data, 90% of the time when it rains, it's less than 1.25 inches. So the 1.25 inch should be absorbed regardless of slope. Once you exceed that, now the slope can certainly affect the volume runoff.
Okay, who hasn't had a chance to speak? Drew?
I guess I want to make it clear that builders and developers aren't the enemy here. Every cost that we get for producing a lot or building a home is paid by the homeowner on the end. They're the only ones bringing money into the transaction. They're the only ones that the builders and developers today are here representing, because those buyers are unknown today after this rule is passed. So it's really easy to put an ordinance together. It's really easy to spend opium, which is other people's money, because they aren't here. Well, they aren't here to counteract it and challenge it. So, you know, I took a look, we had 163 single-family permits from January through October in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We had 164 single-family permits in the city of Marion in the same time frame. Marion's about a quarter the size of Cedar Rapids. Why don't people want to live in Cedar Rapids? I don't think it's because of our soil quality that we have issues too.
Well, to jump in on that, you know, this isn't just the developers that we're talking about. The public side, we're also going to be instituting this, so we're going to be accepting costs on our public policies. And there's also, again, the investment. The investment up front versus the monies we have to pay now, the $50 million in identified problems due to hydraulic dysfunction. So what's better, the pinch of prevention or the pound of cure? And what are those homeowners going to have to pay when their basements are washed out?
You know, I guess the part of my discussion is that affordability factor, and will the buying public be willing to spend, if it's an extra $10,000 to have a house in Cedar Rapids versus someplace else? Is that really what you want to do to the city of Cedar Rapids?
And that's why we're looking at it as a metro-wide
And
policy.
that's why I think you need some data and some facts on, you know, if we have 163 single-family permits, if we add the costs in that you're talking about, we're rapidly approaching $1 million worth of expenditures. And I don't know if that's really getting the results that you're looking for, short-term or long-term, to do this versus maintaining the topsoil on site like the state DNR
Well,
rule
that's still an
is
option.
and why the.
You know, maintaining topsoil on site is still an option. I think that's part of, you know, really to your point, why we've gone with this method, because most communities are either choosing to go with this method, with choosing 8 options. So, you know, this is also spending taxpayer money, because we're looking at doing this in all of our public projects. So we're also looking at how we spend taxpayer money. So this is giving options to the developers, to the builders, to the contractors. There are some communities that are strictly going with a 4-inch or a 6-inch topsoil policy. So if you do not have 4 or 6 inches of topsoil, you now have to pay to bring that topsoil. And our research has shown that, you know, bringing in 6 inches of true topsoil that has to be tested as topsoil is a more expensive option than the suite of 8 options that we have to pick from. So I think, you know, exactly your point, that's why we're looking at this method, to make it more affordable, and have the options. You know, communities that are going to a strict 6-inch rule, that could be very costly, and this is something that we fully intend to do on the public rights of way, and where we're spending taxpayer dollars as well as on private.
Wouldn't it be more effective in your overall goals, though, to also pass in an ordinance for all the existing watersheds to be tested and augmented with a half-inch of compost and tilled in at the homeowner's expenses to them? I mean, that would be very effective, I would think, in rapidly addressing some of the issues you're trying to.
And we're gonna do that through a different method of detention ponds, et cetera, so thank you. In the back.
Just out of curiosity, those rules, 4-inch, 6-inch, that's great. Where are we gonna get all this black dirt?
Through this method, you don't have to get black dirt. There's compost available at the land site. There's a
I think you can take the topsoil available, mix it with compost and sand to make a great formula. There's still not gonna be enough.
Well, again, you don't have to have any topsoil on site to use method number 7.
You can use mixtures in with the existing soil that's there, so you're not having to purchase any topsoil to bring on site.
So at $350 above the compost, we're at 50. Well, I guess that was only 5,000 square feet. That's what we're talking a lot bigger numbers.
Yeah.
In terms of costs.
$50 per
So you're talking $20 a ton for truckload plus your trucking. It's gonna get real expensive real quick.
We got too many people commenting here at the same time. That's a good question. That's why we're gonna look at, you know, talking about timing here, giving them time to run this analysis. So, yes.
I'm Carol Teeter, and I'm here with 2 hats on. I'm a member of the Stormwater Commission here in Cedar Rapids. I'm also a representative of Trees Forever. I want to thank the committee and the staff and the stakeholder groups that have contributed to this. And I really appreciate the flexibility to the point that there's not one prescriptive method being recommended. I think at a time when we're asking farmers and property owners upstream of us to implement practices that will benefit us as far as water quality and water quantity. It's only right that our citizens put something in and try to reduce the load for folks downstream from us. And maybe that's a little Pollyanna-ish, but it's, if we're asking people to participate and help us out, I think it makes sense to help others. But more to the point, the cost, one way or the other, is gonna be pushed onto the homeowner, whether at the point of development or down the road when they have failed landscaping and flooding in their basement and other costs. And I have full confidence in the marketers that are employed that the homeowners can be helped to understand the benefit to them of this asset of improved yards. I also believe that I have a planning background, any health and safety measure that we've been asked to adopt as a society has been pushed back against as an added cost. But where would we be without standardized road widths, water, sewer, and other things that we have come to appreciate as a society? So I look forward to the day that measures such as this policy is considered a standard infrastructure policy.
Back.
My name is Stacy Johnson, and I too sit on the Stormwater Commission, but I also work with the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual, or Iowa Stormwater Education Program, who manages the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual. And I wanted to bring everybody onto a construction site with me today. This is 5 years worth of construction. I happened to drive by a construction site. Basically what we've done here is we've lost 3 foot of storage, water capacity. So what used to go into the ground before grading, now goes directly onto the subsoil. Here's the development now. So you can see side by side what's happening in the front yard versus a developed site, and then this is the backyard. I don't think from when they finish out this house, that grade between the 2 yards is going to be any different. So there's not any room, and this was done, or this development took place prior to 2012, prior to the topsoil policy. So here is the grading, or all of the work happening around the development itself. I took this picture. Okay, go ahead. Took this picture. It rained last Thursday. This was yesterday. So this is a sign of compaction. And when it comes to drainage complaints, once this development is going to happen, that's also a cost that the city bears, is trying to figure out, or tell the homeowners, well, we're sorry, this is between you guys. So, and I think one more picture after that. Yeah, here it is. So once the final grade happens, and I have the soil samples, the topsoil, that's stock soil on the side is up here, sort of the dry version, and then I grabbed 2 samples directly off of the site here. So you can see the difference of the soil structure and what it's going to do in terms of infiltrating the 1.25-inch rain. But during final grading, the Bobcat's going to be out there running over all the clods and compacting it even more to get it flattened out to put the sod over the top. And while it's not necessarily, developers and builders are not the enemy here, but I only think of the home buyer that is buying this property and buying an unknown thing that's kind of hidden under the sod. So like Carol, I applaud you for the decisions that you're about to make. I really think it's smart to give the 7 or 8 options that the Iowa Stormwater Management Manual provides, and I hope that we arrive at some kind of solution on a local level that really protects everybody involved.
Anybody else would like to comment on this issue? Yes.
Yeah, there's all the developments in the area are not clay like that you guys are applying. There's several areas that are very, very sandy. There's not a runoff problem. The water soaks in just fine because they're very, very sandy. So in those areas, you're actually making it worse. I mean, it's certainly not going to, it's not needed because it's so sandy, it doesn't run off, it just soaks in automatically.
Okay. Yep, any other comments as we go on? Yes, in the back there.
Method 2 will address that. And just one other thing about available water capacity on excessively sandy sites, the addition of the compost would really enhance the water holding capacity, which would really benefit lawns and all vegetation.
Yes, good.
Nearly all of the conversation about cost has been from the development and builder side. I would like to add that I think it's important that we compare those costs with what the total costs are for not doing this and the costs from our 2014 flash flooding. There's a cost for not doing it. I'm concerned also if this is based on long-term data that our average rain is 1¼ inches. We know that extreme precipitation events are happening at a much higher rate, are likely to continue to happen at a much higher rate than they have historically, and that the problem of runoff will be far worse, and that needs to be addressed in the plan as part of what we do to absorb water in our topsoil.
Okay. Any other, then we're gonna move on to other issues here in a second, but go ahead, Jim.
It seems like we're talking about flood control and flooding areas, and I think most of that has tended to be closer in, and the developments that you're probably initially putting this into effect on would be areas that are probably further out and would have detention built in with those developments. So there is more control of where the water goes on these newer developments. Obviously, as Drew mentioned, a lot of our problem areas and our older areas, John was talking about some flooding by Oakland Road and a couple of other areas that are probably closer in. I think those areas are the areas that don't have detention. So whatever gets absorbed, obviously, into that yard gets absorbed, and the rest of it is going to run off into the storm sewer system in the older part of the city, which is just the way it was designed back then. The depiction that this screen had up, in a newer responsible development, obviously you are stripping the topsoil and stockpiling it. I don't know what exactly is going on in that process, but certainly in the middle of the process, you do have exposed subsoil that would be, I presume, in some cases less absorbent if it's clay. As Mike was saying, a lot of the areas, especially northeast and nearer the river, would be most of what we work on is quite sandy and generally hilly, but so you do have much more absorption, and obviously the sand is the best for absorbing and minimizing runoff because it's going to be the maximum. I guess my bigger concern is, do we have some adequate studies of areas that have had some kind of process similar to this in effect for a year or two that we can look at and look at what's most cost effective? Where do we get the most bang for our buck? Are we doing the right thing for the community overall, or should we be using more funds into detention areas, into regional planning of detention? Are there areas we can put some money into in the overall plan? Not saying we shouldn't try to improve the soil conditions or make sure that we have reasonable topsoil and absorption. But are we looking at this overall, or are we, again, doing a shotgun effect, saying, hey, let's have yards more porous, but again, where are we going to accomplish the most with our funds to improve the overall community? So I'd like to know, have we looked at this from other markets and other areas, Midwest? We're in the best, most fertile ground in the country, in this part of the country. So we start out with some pretty good soil in many areas. So I'd just like to know, are we looking at what's worked, what's been effective, and what's the most cost effective? And then I would also say, do we have some, again, Midwest studies that show what we are dealing with as far as original soil, and what's the makeup of what we have? So do we have enough data and experience? And I would just welcome some more input. I just saw this in print, I think last Wednesday. And I know a couple of the others, including Dick Ransom, have been working on it longer. But I just want to make sure we're looking ahead and thinking this through. Our lot size would be more representative of what Dustin said, probably an average of 6,000. But again, we don't have all the data put together on this side either. So I just want to make sure that we're looking before we leap, and that we're doing the most responsible method, and that we're looking at the big picture.
Jim, you're right on target with your comment, and this is not the ultimate solution to the flooding problem. It's one small piece of it. And in addition to the major storm sewer improvements we've identified, which amounts to over $50 million. We're working on things like pervious pavements. We've installed our first bioswale in the city of Cedar Rapids. We're thinking about what we might do to the developments that were pre-detention required. And even some discussions about can we in some way go back into those developments and build detention in those developments that don't have it. So this is one small part of a lot of efforts underway here in the city right now.
Well,
So-
and that's what I was referring to, is not to be smart, but are there some areas that we can, whether that means you've got to eliminate some buildings occasionally, or are there some public areas that can be adapted to have some bioswales or even underground storage, but are there some ways we can retrofit some of the closer in areas that are
Yeah,
part of
that's
the
okay.
overall
And I
plan?
think the important message is it's not either or. Like, we're not looking at doing this or that. We're looking at doing this and this and this. You know, we feel like there are lots of steps that need to be taken, like Ralph mentioned, going into some of those older areas. Because remember, what those inner areas are now, you know, the areas we're developing on the outsides now and down the future, those will become part of the inside area as the city continues to grow and expand. So we're not looking at this being an or. We've got watershed authorities set up, stormwater commission, stormwater managed, our stormwater master plan. So this is a piece that will be included as part of it.
And that's changed the focus. I'm sure our community, I hope, is working on, focusing and working on areas that were more heavily flood affected. It seems to me the promotion of this is going to be further out where we are creating detention.
And we are doing that, Jim. So anybody else has not had a chance to speak, that has not spoke, Drew, do you want to?
Just quick, could you give us a community that we could call some developers and talk to
Yeah.
them and say what worked well and what didn't work well?
We have done some of that. We are, and again, what I'd like to do is this, and Ralph and I talked, and we don't have Ann here today, and, you know, we met with the Developers Council. We are gonna move forward in continuing this effort, but I think Ralph and I agree that, you know, we're willing to give a little more time for this study to be done, but we're gonna have a deadline. And that, you know, because we do need to tie this to the master plan. And so, you know, I think what we want to do is, I personally, and I'm going to speak personally, I'm tired of having the flash flooding and the events and facing the people in the different parts. And this is, like, I think Ralph hit it right on the head, is one small piece of our plan to solve this issue, just as we're working on the streets. And we intend to work with the developers group, but we intend to come up with a plan. It's going to cost the homeowner one way or the other. Either we're going to have to face the issues if we do nothing and raise the taxes to stop the flash flooding by doing detention, or we try to slow it down. And I'm going to use my personal experience. I went into a development in '99 that has crap soil. And our condo association spent a lot more than what it would have costed developers to aerate 3 or 4 times over a 6-year period to finally to be able to grow grass. And so we want to make sure that we are getting good topsoil quality, and developers are doing it. Most developers are. And so I think it's a combination of things. It's drainage and topsoil and all of that. So I would think our next committee meeting will be, I think, the 3rd week in January. We'll have one in December, but the 3rd week in January. And I would think that would be reasonable time to complete the study, give a report back to us, and then this committee can make a recommendation to the city council for action early next year. I think, Ralph, you agree with that concept?
Yeah, I want you guys to be comfortable with your.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to have to cancel vacations to get this thing done and things like that. So if you think the middle of January would be enough time to do your work, to give us the input as to help us make the right decision here, then I have no problem with that.
Question, not being sarcastic, I've been going through this. We level out the lot the way the grade needs to be, we can't be within 6 inches of siding, that's code. So then we amend, we rototill, we get everything done. My question, I'm still trying to figure this out, how do I lay sod and not compact? Because I've seen that compaction is one of the key issues. And I'm trying to say, how do I get sod on? Because we're using technology that has wheels that compacts. Any ideas?
I don't mean to be smart aleck either, but I'm a real big fan of the compost and seeding.
If it's not on the hill, I get it. If we have a walkout as an example, then I'm looking at all that beautiful work
Yeah.
going down.
Yeah.
Although research by
Yeah.
Iowa State probably 10 years ago indicated that a 2-inch layer of compost will absorb 4 inches of rain and not generate runoff. And my personal experience bore that out.
I'm agreeing with the young lady
Yeah.
back there that said we're having these more of these like 5 inches in an hour break. That's.
Well, there is that too.
Yeah.
How
much will that compost impact?
Right, it will, but not to the level, so if those top layers of soil are all stripped off, your soil is gonna compact much more densely than it will by using these methods and these mixtures. So you're not gonna get the level of compaction. In addition, the equipment that you're running, so the very large equipment that you're running when you are grading out an entire site is much heavier, much, gonna impact that compaction. Generally, the equipment that you're coming in when you're laying sod is very small equipment that's not heavy, that is not going to compact it like your very large.
The issue is, this is a tested method, we're gonna study the method, we are gonna look at different methods, and so the issue is, we're now giving you the time that you requested, and we just need to then, at that point, give us a report, and we'll do some other studies, and then from there, the committee will make a recommendation to the city council. You ready to, Ralph?
Just one final comment. The reason why I put so much stock in your numbers, Dustin, is, I don't know how many times I've heard it said here, the ultimate, the party that pays is the homeowner. And this ordinance process has a public hearing element to it. And this is gonna be, the place where the public can come and tell us what they wanna tell us before we adopt an ordinance. If we have the kind of information that the development community gives us as to what the cost the new homeowner is going to see, that's what they need to have in order to make proper comments about their opinions at the public hearing. So I think the whole process is fine. I agree with you 100%. You have to pass the cost along. The homeowner's the one that's gonna end up paying it. We, as sitting on a council, wanna make sure we understand how much it's gonna cost a homeowner when we adopt this. And what they think about that.
I think also maybe one more final point is that, as you're looking at those numbers, look at what are the numbers to you if there's a 4-inch rule or a 6-inch rule, because, really in our minds, do nothing isn't really one of our options. It's coming up with a policy that works. So,
Yeah.
I think, looking at your numbers of what does it cost you if there is 2 inches of topsoil there, or if there's no topsoil there to bring in 4 inches or 6 inches, what's that cost to you?
Yep, and again, we appreciate everybody's, is there anything new you got?
Yeah, and it kind of ties into that, if the state of Iowa has to do it, it would be a procedural analysis of the order of the steps in the development of these developments, that some of the order of the steps are counterproductive, causing compaction, We have a cost analysis, can we have a procedure analysis by the universities or Iowa State or whoever? Because maybe that's part of the problem, just the way, like you said, just the way we do things.
Yeah.
Are counterproductive.
Yeah. All right, I appreciate everybody, great turnout. We're gonna proceed with the rest of our agenda. We just have some reports, you're welcome to stay. And thank you all for being here. All right.
Good to see you. Yeah, I'm gonna be, we all trying to get some clients.
No, I got a bunch.
You want us redoing the whole neighborhood?
Huh?
You want us redoing the whole neighborhood?
How you doing?
It's a lot.
That's beyond the scope.
Okay, let's keep on going here. Garrett, do you have anything to add on your report? I know you have the time frame in there, things are moving.
Yeah. It was really not a whole lot of update this one. We had the workshop on October 14th. this year, I provided some preliminary results of the model we were working on. We also decided to select the Campbell Basin as the first watershed basin on the model. We also had a discussion we asked that we next workshop is scheduled for December.
Okay. Thank you, Garrett. Sanitary sewer master plan, Sandy?
Yep, the update this month is again very similar to last month's update. The engineering consultant HDR is again working on their modeling effort, which is due to be complete in March of 2016. The project is on schedule. We actually have a third of 5 workshops this Thursday to view some preliminary results of that modeling. So
Okay.
we're pleased with the progress so far.
Super. And thanks for the update chart in there. I think that's handy so we can see how the steps are going. Todd, we heard your news about the ash borer being in Lynn County, so.
Yeah, and I'm not here for very long. I just wanted to, this all happened about the day after
Yeah.
the last infrastructure meeting. So we just wanted to come today and see if you had any questions or concerns or you need any clarification on the plan. The parts that were active are still active, or have been active. There are some portions that this did kick in. So, like I said, I don't know if you had any questions or not, but that's kind of why I'm here. To see if anything.
Have we identified at any place in the city other than that extreme south end of?
No, and that's been the tricky thing about this. It is technically in Cedar Rapids, but really it's in the rest stop way south of town, which makes it a bit difficult for us to kind of delimit and find exactly where it's at. Like I've said before, I know it's here somewhere. You know, we know it is actually in town somewhere, but confirmation-wise, that's the only place we have where we know for a fact that it's there. We're waiting on results from the DNR. They do what's called a delimiting survey, where they'll kind of radiate out from there and go until they don't find any more ash borers. Once we know that, we'll know if they found it in the city or if it's, you know, so we're kind of waiting for that.
You mentioned just quickly there that because they're now in the county, it changes your plan. What changed? I mean, we have another steps that we jump into then with our city plan?
Yeah, we've been, like we talked about having a treatment option out there.
Yeah.
But that really wasn't going to start until we actually had confirmation. So that's one of the things that kicked in. So, and again, but most of the plan was already in play. You know, we're already planting a diverse species of trees. We're removing, you know, ash trees that are in bad shape. You know, all of those other steps are already active.
So we're going to move to a treatment plan of city trees, is what you're saying?
Oh, per the management plan, there will be sections that we will treat to manage versus treat to keep.
And will there be some advice coming from your department to the people that have ash trees on their own lots?
One of the things I want to do this winter is have a bit of a workshop, call it open house or whatever, and kind of go over our plan. And again, I can get a lot of questions on treatment, everything else, and like do something this winter for residents on that.
Okay.
That'll be, except probably later in winter, January, February, somewhere around there. The option people to come.
Good question.
I guess I might just add something to it. One thing Todd and I talked about earlier is throughout the year, this winter and last, while the forestry team has been removing ash trees, as they're removing them, as they're crushing them and so forth, they look for signs of the ash borer, and to this day have not found any.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're all trained in how to ID and strip the bark off a tree to find them, and it's almost a competition among the crew to see who can find it. It is. I'm glad they're excited, but you know, but it is helping. So they are actually looking for it whenever they're taking down ash trees. They're looking for the signs and symptoms, and if they find them, they're stripping the bark off and trying to find everything. So we have that. You know, they are actively looking for it whenever they're taking ash trees down.
Okay, great. All right, that's okay. Doug, anything paving for progress?
I gave you a long list of projects we've got in design and getting ready to bid it in your handout. Those are streets that we've identified for 2016 for our street maintenance group. One thing that we're doing this year is we're obviously, if you look at that, we're focusing on that one neighborhood so we can maximize the efficiencies of that group. That's what you're going to see probably going forward sometimes, but we'll continue to look at all parts of the city. We're working very hard on our public meeting format and how we're going to present projects to the public. We've got open houses coming up on Seminole Valley Road, Northwood Drive Northeast, Memorial Drive, here in the next week. So we're moving forward with our public meetings on projects.
Are most of the engineers and everybody on board for the ones you've identified for 16? Are we moving forward?
Yes, yes. I mean, the list that you have in your packet are
Right.
all projects that are
Under
contract
Under
with
contract.
the designer. And then this is just a list of the ones that the city's going to city forces.
Yeah, and just a final step, have we completed now officially all of our 2015 projects under paving?
Yes, yes, I did everything, we had 4th and 7th, we're wrapping up, you know, there's some minor things to take care of on projects, but pretty much everything's wrapped up.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Yep, any other questions for? And upcoming utility projects? Jim?
Yeah, it's be pretty brief here. This report is very similar to what you saw last month. We've got a lot of things going on in January. Probably the biggest is going to be the chlorine system upgrades. They'll get kicking off. Other than that, I have nothing really to add to the report that was given.
From previous slides, yeah. Good, no, we appreciate the updates, so we see those coming down the pipe. All right, any questions on water projects or waste projects? All right, let me see, public comment. Anybody else like to comment about anything else?
I'll give you the cliff notes of me.
I miss you. I miss Mike. How did I miss Mike? You're right up front. I'm sorry.
I'll be very brief. Asphalt work, we've got one more project that we're doing next week. We are enjoying the warmer weather. The asphalt plant is scheduled to close before Thanksgiving. We did do 35 ADA ramps by November 1st. Because of the good weather, we broke into another 20 more. We are doing some bus pads for the transportation group. And we also have a couple of open projects right now on Americus and Memorial. We did crush all of our concrete that we broke this year out at the Bowling Street facility, so 13,202 tons that we'll use on our projects for next year for modified sub-base.
Great.
And I just want to report that we are ready for winter. We had this time last year we already had an ice event and a 4-inch snow, so we prepared early. We had plenty of salt in our domes, and we start with our second and third shift November 30th. So
November 30th. Okay. All right. Any questions for Mike?
Yesterday, I took a break on my tractor, in my driveway.
You ready?
Let her snow.
You never know.
I apologize, Mike.
No,
sorry. I stepped over the item. Anybody else have any items of public comment that relate to any items? Yes.
Just a quick comment for Todd, actually. There's, I know a couple of tree removal projects as part of the flood control system that will be happening this fall. My team is handling it. I'm not personally though. I think we're down in the Sinclair site, so that might be an opportunity to be looking for the ash borer as those trees take down.
Okay. Any other comments? Public comments? All right, let's see, we have future agenda items. Transit system, it says January of 15, we mean 16 there, or? 16. 16, yeah, I just noted that. Ralph, do you have anything you'd like to add to the upcoming items? Assessment policy, Jen, when do you think that, or Jen Lee, when is that gonna be coming? Have you got a date on that yet?
I do not. I'll try to get you an update on that on a set date. We're still working through that.
Okay. And then, so otherwise, any other items, Ralph, you want to add to our list for future meetings?
No, everything.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion. We have a motion to adjourn. I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.